Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Here, inshallah, I shall try to explain the basic principles of photosynthesis. And because if you're like me, when I first learned this material, it was a bit of a magical thing because it's kind of like, okay, this is what photosynthesis is. Photosynthesis is a process whereby plants take carbon dioxide from the air and they take water, and with the help of sunlight, right, and this magical molecule called chlorophyll, they make glucose and oxygen. So now, if you look at this, okay, that's what photosynthesis is. Somebody asks you what photosynthesis is, you would say, well, it's a process where plants take carbon dioxide and water, and with the help of sunlight and chlorophyll, turn the carbon dioxide and water into glucose molecules and oxygen. And glucose molecules are a source of energy for us. And if you're fancier, you say it's a stored form of energy. Okay? And besides this, it also makes, for usable energy, which is in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Okay. So that's what photosynthesis is. But if you're like me, it's like, okay, fine. What is that? Whatever that means, okay? Because how is it this carbon dioxide, water, and what's the big deal about the sunlight? What does sunlight have to do with it? And how does it work? How does sunlight, what is it about? And why is chlorophyll so special? And what does it mean that the energy is stored in this form? So there are some of these kind of fundamental questions that I wish I understood, and the answer to these questions are very beautiful and give you a more comprehensive understanding of photosynthesis. So if anybody regurgitates all this information that you see, that's all fine. But the beauty of photosynthesis lies in understanding how light is important. What is it really about light that drives this reaction? And what is it really special about chlorophyll? And what does it mean that energy is stored in this way? Okay? And what is energy anyways? Right? Well, if you ask, energy is the ability to do work and this and this and this. So that's what these are some basic concepts I want to kind of try to appreciate, and I hope I can relay this to you. First of all, let's talk about what does it mean that energy is stored. So when you eat a candy bar, if you drink Gatorade or some juice, and you get energy from it, right? But what you're really getting is you're getting glucose, which is made by plants. And then you break it down into a usable form of energy in ATP, and then you get stronger, right? But what does that mean, you get stronger? Okay? So now, the energy is really ability to do work, right? For example, you feel very weak, and then you get a candy bar, and then you feel stronger, right? So what does the strength mean? Now, I like to suggest to you a simple example, okay? Let's say you want to pick an apple from the table like this. Okay, here's an apple, okay? And you want to pick it up. To do that, here's your arm. Okay, it has to make a series of motions, right? You have to go boom, have to go like this. This is your arm, right? It has to make a series of motions, right? These motions are driven by muscles. And in the muscles, there are these proteins, okay, that cause this motion to occur. Now, how does that happen? At a very molecular level, it would look deep down. If you magnify that area, you would see all motion that is, okay, it's like a protein that goes from this state to, let's say, this state. So it goes from here to here. So when the protein goes from this way to this way, this angle H has changed, the protein has changed. So protein has changed shape. Okay? Correct? Now, what causes this protein to change shape is a chemical reaction. Okay? Now, so when we have muscle, here's a muscle, Here's somebody's biceps, okay? Here's somebody's biceps. So when they flex their biceps, right? When they flex their biceps, this is what they're doing. The proteins are shrinking. Now that means the protein shape is actually changing. Protein is changing in shape, and in its size, it's shrinking, so to speak. Okay? You follow? And this, and if you multiply this by millions of times, which is because muscle has lots of them, it results in a change in the shape of the muscle. And if the muscle happens to be attached to something, it results in pulling that whatever thing that is attached to that muscle, whether it be apple or a pencil. So ultimately, what we mean by energy is the ability to carry out chemical reactions. Correct? A simple example is like picking something up, which results from a lot of tiny changes in the shape of the protein, which shrink the size of the protein, resulting in the change and of the protein size of the muscle, which allows us to pull. Okay, now we understand that when we say we have energy, this means we have the ability to do chemical reactions. Correct? Now, the ability to do chemical reactions, we understand this. This ability to do chemical reactions, okay, is very simplistically speaking, is related to electrons. Not just electrons, it's related to high energy electrons. Okay? Now, high energy electrons, what does that mean? What this means is if you have an atom, okay, let's say that's an atom, okay? Right? And an atom has protons here, like this, and it has neutrons in here, right? And it has a bunch of electrons like floating around, right? Like here's electrons in the first orbital, and then there are a bunch of electrons in the second orbit, like this. You follow? Now, chemical reactions are a result of the highly energetic electrons way out there from the nucleus. Because the farther away an electron is from the nucleus, the higher the energy has. Right? So it is these high energy electrons that participate in chemical reactions. In other words, if you want an atom to participate in a chemical reaction, you want it to have... So if you want an atom to undergo a chemical reaction, you want to look at the high energy electrons. So I had to pause and I broke my chain of thought. So I'll try to pick up where I was. So it is the critical thing is chemical reactions occur because of this high energy electrons, and these are the farthest. Now these are the valence electrons, if you recall from chemistry. So these valence electrons are the ones that participate in chemical reactions. Okay, now if we have this, if you have two atoms, let's say atom A and atom B, okay, I'm just making this up, and this atom has like a super excited high energy electron going crazy, right? It's like way out there, a high energy electron, and this guy's got, an electron is like a shy electron, is not very excited, right? It will be this electron, it will be this atom that's going to participate in the chemical reactions. Okay? Now, if you understand that, if you understand the fact that it's high energy electrons that participate in chemical reactions, and that high energy electrons are very precious because they participate in chemical reactions, then you understand the value of photosynthesis, because what photosynthesis essentially does, it generates the high energy electrons. Okay? And it's as simple as that. It generates high energy electrons. Okay? Now, how does it generate as high energy electron? That is exceptionally simple. Exceptionally simple. The way it does it is, see, light is the energy source for this electron. So if you take an electron, okay, and it gives you more light, because light is energy. And electrons capture the energy. They go from like a not so energetic electron to a high energy excited electron like this. That's what light is. The rest of photosynthesis is taking care, packaging high energy electron into ways that can be carried and safely stored until that you need it. And the storage molecules are the ATP and the glucose molecules. Right? So the photosynthesis conceptually is actually quite simple. Okay, and the idea is the photosynthesis generates high energy electrons and stores those electrons in the form of ATP and glucose. When we say ATP generates energy, what we really means is when we say photosynthesis generates energy, what we really means it generates high energy electrons, okay, and then those electrons are stored and kept safe in energy molecules, ATP and glucose. So these molecules are simply a repository, a storage compartment for high energy electrons, and when you need them, you get it from them to do whatever reactions that you want to do with those electrons. Okay, so as a review, photosynthesis is a process where plants capture light energy and store it in chemicals. Now let's look at this. Okay, now let's look at this. And this is light. Okay, and this is chlorophyll. And this generates C6H12O6, H12O6, which is glucose. Okay, and oxygen. And then plus frequently energy. It's written as energy here in reactions, but in the form of ATP and etc. You follow what I'm saying? The ATP and glucose. Now glucose is the stored form of energy. ATP is like cache energy, okay? Now this is photosynthesis. Now this is photosynthesis. Now look what's happening here. Photosynthesis is a process where you take light energy. Now we said you use light energy to excite those electrons. Those electrons are excited and they're kept stored. And they're kept stored in new molecules called this. Now where are you going to get those molecules? You're going to make them from here and here. And these molecules, none of these molecules have those high energy electrons, right? So they're stored here or in the form of ATP. And as a byproduct, oxygen is given off. That's photosynthesis. Now, right? Now, glucose, as you recall, is a carbohydrate. It's a carbohydrate. I hyphenated here for emphasis here. Carbohydrate. Carbo means like referring to carbon, hydrate referring to water. So carbohydrates, the little term is it's a compound made of carbon and derived from additional water. That's what carbohydrates are really. So carbohydrates, glucose is a carbohydrate molecule. Okay? Now, that is photosynthesis as a chemical reaction. But photosynthesis is, if you recall, photosynthesis generates high energy electrons, those excited electrons, okay, which are stored in the form of ATP and glucose, etc. Okay? And for what? So that you can do chemical reactions, which you want to carry out. And that's what we mean by energy. Whether chemical reaction means getting up and doing something, or just thinking, or even talking. These are all based on, fundamentally, at a molecular level, and chemical reactions. And high energy electrons. And simply, high energy electrons is an electron, okay, that it's an electron that, struck by lightning bolt, it becomes, a high energy electron. That's what it really is. This electron that's struck by a lightning bolt really is a high energy electron. Okay? Because not all electrons are the same, because we talked about electrons that are closer to the nucleus are not as higher energy as electrons that are farther from the nucleus. So I hope you understand this process with the big picture of photosynthesis, where photosynthesis is a process where plants capture light energy and store it in energy compounds such as carbohydrates and ATP, etc. And when we say they capture light energy, we mean that the light is captured and is given to electrons, making a not so light, not so energetic electron to high energy electron, which is stored in high energy bonds and compounds for later use. So that's the big summary picture of photosynthesis. Inshallah, next time we shall go on and talk about photosynthesis in greater detail. Until then, Assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.